Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to what promises to be a very educational, inspirational, and hopefully enjoyable hour with some of what I consider to be the best and brightest minds in child welfare here in our area. And we are glad to present and participate in this day of what we're calling decision making at 18. And the design, of course, is to try to provide good information, interaction that's helpful, and of course, maybe some challenging thoughts as we try to work with kids in care who will find themselves turning 18 and having to make some tough decisions about their lives. So we hope to be able to present that in a fashion that will be both productive and inspirational to everybody who's watching. So to introduce this panel to you, let me start by introducing Sandy McCabe, who is, actually, I apologize. I'm going to start with Sarah Crocker. You're okay with that, Sandy, right? Okay. Sarah is basically currently working as the youth support manager at Foster Angels of Central Texas. And she has years of experience in the child welfare space. She's also developed, launched, and managed one of the first supervised independent living programs in the state of Texas. So we're glad to have Sarah with us today. Jacob Huerca is currently the Chief Executive Officer of Connections Individual Services in New Braunfels, and has spent the majority of his career working with at-risk youth and families. And I've known Jacob for I don't know how many years back in the day when you were up in Austin, and so I'm really excited to have Jacob participate with us as well. Then we have Jessica Devaney, who is the attorney representing us as an attorney today. She's a former attorney with the Comal County District Attorney's Office, serving as the Child Protective Services prosecutor, and has since left that position to start her own law firm, working with CPS cases, representing the children, parents, and family members in those suits. And we welcome Jessica too. I've worked with her for years, and I'm really proud to have her on board as the representation of the attorney side of things. Now we get to Sandy. And Sandy and I have gone back many years as well, serving in cases together as well as in other capacities. So she is the regional director assistant for Region 8 of Texas and has been with the Department of Family and Protective Services since May of 2012. Her experience is in family-based safety services, statewide intake, conservatorship, adoptions and investigations, PMC supervision. So she brings a wealth of experience and knowledge to this table today. I'm Tim Judkins, and I am a casework supervisor with CASA of Central Texas, and have served in this capacity for 11 years, and mostly dealing with the population, the teenage population, however, not exclusively. So I try to bring to the table what I know from a CASA position working with teens as well. So we're excited to begin this journey. One more person who certainly is perhaps what we would consider the star of our show today, and her name is Lisa Howell. And she is a former foster youth herself, and we're so glad to have her participate with us on this time, because we really do need the input of somebody who's been down the road. And without a doubt, Ms. Howell has done that. And we're going to let her talk a little bit about her own experiences. But just to let you know, she's a 25-year-old mother of two beautiful children, one 3 years old and the other 11 months. And she's currently working for Spectrum Internet and TV Services, is going to real estate school part-time. And she, as I mentioned, is a former foster youth, was in the system from the age of 9 until she aged out at 18. And we're going to let her kind of share a little bit right now of her experiences and story, and then we'll pick up from there. So welcome, Lisa. We're glad to have you.
Awesome. I'm happy to be here. Thank you. I am basically, you just said it all, 25 years old from Austin, Texas, born and raised. I was in the foster care system for almost 10 years. And I have two beautiful kids, as you said, and I work for Spectrum. I've been there for about 2 months, and I go to real estate school now as well, part-time. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, my experience in foster care wasn't the best experience. So hopefully, being here, we could talk about how we could break generational curses and making sure that, you know, youth who age out now have the best support that they have and need. And just, you know, walking with them through that process to make sure, you know, they can trust people and have a security, you know, when they get out and they don't have, you know, any issues. So I'm just excited to be here and talk about that.
Well, Lisa, let me ask you to start with, and as a person who was in the system for so long, I'm sure at some point you started hearing about what it might be to turn 18 and what would be out there and what would be facing you and what would be available. Can you kind of tell us a little bit from your point of view how that was for you as you turned 14, 15, 16 and you started hearing these kinds of conversations? How did you hear that stuff and were you able to digest it?
Right. So the way I heard about it was at the time was my PAL coordinator. And, you know, I don't know if y'all familiar. She was coordinator as well. And they were the ones who basically kind of guided us and was like, hey, these are the classes that you need to take and things like that. They weren't the people that actually sat in the room with us and gave us the paperwork. I do feel that they failed us with the PAL coordinator part only because I feel that in order to prepare youth for the reality of life, you cannot just give them a piece of paper or a packet saying, hey, this is what you need to do in A, B, and C. I think it takes more of walking with them, taking them to the bank, teaching them about credit hands-on, teaching them about how to buy a house, things like that. They didn't teach us, not specifically saying her or, and I just feel like just in general, you know, this is where the state, you know, failed me in general or failed other youth. I think it wasn't the best process for me, to be honest, because when I did age out, I was homeless for a little bit before I actually got my first apartment. And I actually had to do my own digging, do my own research when it came to accessing my resources. A lot of the times, you know, the CPS workers, they were supposed to set us up for that, making sure they reached out, you know, to these resources to connect us. And they didn't do that at the time. It was more of like, hey, you're 18. This is what life is right now. Go on about your way. You know what I mean? And that's where a lot of the time now, a lot of foster youth are homeless and they're confused, they're scared, they don't know what to do when they turn 18 because this is where they were failed within the system. You know what I mean? I felt it wasn't a reality of what they were giving us because when we actually got out here, it was nothing about, we didn't get taught what we should have been taught. You know what I mean?
Well, Lisa, I can tell you that some of the things you said we will pick up on here in our kind of our next portion of this. But before we move on, of the resources you were introduced to that you had available to you, what would you have said were the most valuable or the one you knew you had to take advantage of?
Most definitely was the most valuable and I had to take advantage of was accessing my aftercare benefits for sure. Being able to know, hey, whenever I turn 18, I need to go in and lock in my college before I'm 21. You know, getting that information is really valuable because, you know, when you turn 21, you no longer get that opportunity to go to college anymore if you don't do that. So that was really important, taking advantage of the tuition and the fee waivers with ETV, things like that was really important. You know, with LifeWorks, they were really big people in Austin right now who that's where you go to go access your benefits when you get out of care. So that was really big.
So how important was it to you as you approached 18 to have a person or people in your life to, I'll say, hold your hand across that threshold into adulthood? And did you have that kind of a person in your life?
At the time, no, I did not. I didn't. Like I said, I was homeless. I experienced homelessness for a very long time after I aged out of care. So I didn't really have someone to hold my hand. It was more of me having to realize, hey, I'm out here on my own. I need to reach out to whoever I can. And that's when, you know, I got in touch with foster angels or Austin Angels or, you know, churches and things like that. And they were the ones who kind of like pushed me to be like, hey, Lisa, you can do this. These are the places that you can go. This is the stuff that, you know, we can give you in order to help you be successful. And I think that that was really important because you need all the support you can, you know, when you age out.
Well, you mentioned you reached out to foster angels. How did you know to do that?
Look it up online. I think knowledge is power.
Okay, so you're already saying something, Lisa, that I think highlights a concern for those of us who work hands-on with a lot of these kids. Taking that initiative to seek and research out that kind of an opportunity, in my experience, is rare on the part of a kid about to turn 18. They just, you can tell them that, they know to do it, they just don't until they find themselves in a situation that forces them to have to either panic or press in or something like that. And Sandy, why don't you jump in here real quick? You were a PMC supervisor for a couple of years. How does what Lisa's saying weigh into some of what you saw happening?
So I think that I've noticed throughout my career an evolution of the foster care system. Obviously, that's ongoing as we have continued to monitor our current legislation that is trying to implement systems in place so that way youth, no matter where they are in the process of being in the foster care system, that we aggressively and act with a sense of urgency in regard to permanency, and also working with that child and meeting the family where they are in order to enable them to have the adequate supports to be that long-standing support once the child is no longer a part of the foster care system. So I know that a lot of us have been watching the legislative session that closes on the 31st, and there's a lot of really excellent initiatives that are being proposed that are geared toward creating positive permanency solutions and being able to have the flexibility to do that, right? Because we understand that we're limited in our capacity as well. You know, we hear a lot about safety first, and there's minimum standards associated with providing care to children who are in the system, and it makes it very difficult for these families who have who come from a specific socioeconomic background or who come from various cultural backgrounds that may not align with those minimum standards. And so we try to have those creative solutions. We try to, we've now been trying to empower the youth to be able to keep themselves safe and understand how to do that safely, regardless of what limitations their current existing system of support may have.
So, Lisa, you mentioned that of the resources you were attracted to or take most advantage of was your college tuition, which, by the way, is a point of clarification. You have till age 25 to secure your college waiver.
Wow, so they extended it.
Yeah, well, it's always been 25, I think. Just as long as you take one class.
They said 21, by 21, you have to lock it in.
That's 25, unless that's changed ever. And that's important to hear, because if you thought that somebody gave you information that wasn't exactly
true, yeah.
And we just need to make sure that that's true. And I find that a lot, quite honestly, is in circles of support and times like that, that a lot of the professionals, honestly, don't know some of these basics. And so I've left a lot of circles wondering what would have happened in that circle of support if I hadn't been there. And, you know, I can't be at every circle, right? It's like, people are the pros here. You're supposed to know this stuff, and yet the information wasn't accurate. Okay, that's there. But of those resources, you know, you mentioned the aftercare and the college tuition waiver. What resources didn't matter to you? Or can you even identify those?
I mean, I felt
you're not even probably going to think of them because they didn't matter to you.
I mean, I can't say that resources didn't matter, because when you're in a time of like panic mode and you're in that type of situation that you're homeless, everything matters. You know what I mean? Possible.
So when you were homeless, did you think to contact your PAL worker to assist you?
I did. No lie. I'm sorry to cut you off. I did contact my PAL worker due to the circumstances of the way I was when I was in care. They did not want to take me back so I could go back into care. So that was more of like, okay, I'm just out here. You know what I mean? So it was more of just feeding for yourself. Like she said, you know, depending on the background and things like that, sometimes they will pick and choose who they want to help. You know what I mean? And that was more of a thing for me. I felt like they picked and choose who they wanted to help.
So one of the resources you're struggling with was actually the department. You know, whether it was the caseworker or the PAL or the classes,
right,
or the information, it's all been like for you kind of a letdown when it came down to what you really needed to do from your perspective. Let me bring Jacob in on this real quick, because Jacob, I know you oversee a transitional living program where kids like her are kind of finding themselves getting ready. In light of what she's saying, in light of what you see on a daily basis, what's happening in the TLP to help a kid get ready to make that jump, if it were, or how many of them decide to even stay after 18 under extended foster care as opposed to making the leap to independence, not even being ready for it?
So y'all know me, it's hard to keep myself on mute because I just wanted to talk and talk and talk. So I have had the opportunity to run a great organization, but also I've been a foster parent twice and a 2-time adopted parent. And so Lisa was 21 at some point in time. I think it was about 8 to 10 years ago, and then the legislative, they changed it. So I can tell you as a foster parent who helped my adopted son now navigate the education training voucher, how frustrating that could be for a youth, because I basically did the paperwork with him. I called his education training voucher point of contact with him. I had to call his PAL people for him. You're sending children who are 18 years old out into the world, and they got to navigate systems. And so somebody who's, you know, I'm a master's level social worker. I'm used to doing that for a living. It was not a burden for me, but it was frustrating even as a social worker to have to navigate these resources for my son. So Lisa, yes, I understand that, because we're sending children out into the world with very limited resources. He had an adopted dad. He had an adopted mom at the time to help navigate some of these systems. So from a provider standpoint, I can tell you a lot of our kids, they just want to leave care when they're 18. They're so done with CPS. And even though it's like this, they know that the help is there and they know that the providers are willing to help. They just want to leave. And they want to experience life, because they're so used to the constraints that is set up by a system raising children. And I think that is the biggest issue, is we have systems raising children, systems trying to help children. They're not designed to uniquely help an individual. But I can tell you, providers, child protective services, those folks out there, the CASAs, they genuinely do want to help the children. And I think they do a great job of trying to tell children about the benefits of staying in care. We do send a lot of kids out to college. We do graduate a lot of youth here at Connections as well. But mainly what I see is kids are like, I want to leave. And I can relate, because when I was 18, I wanted to leave my house too, you know. But then you have a system of folks that have to, if they stay in care, they got to have their caseworker come, their CASA come, they have to go and do all these things, and they have to continually interact with so many people. And there's a lot of rules. There's a lot of rules. And so I'm glad that Sandy brought that up about minimum standards, because as a provider, that's one of our frustrating points, is we have a 330-page manual of rules that we have to follow. And unfortunately, that trickles down to what the kids can and cannot do. So sorry for the rant.
That's fine, Jacob. Thank you. I wanted to kind of go back to Lisa real quick, because in the course of your process, did anybody ever were you in a position where you could have taken advantage of extended foster care, and did anybody tell you about that?
Yes, so they did tell me about it. And at the time, I didn't really know too much information about it. I do remember that I did take advantage of I feel like I went back into care one time. I do remember going back maybe one time, and then like he said, it was so many restraints. It was so much you know, them just hovering over me, them having to be in my business a lot. They want to allow me to, you know, I feel like it was just like, you're just so nosy. I didn't like it. You know what I mean? Like, it was uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
Well, I do. And I think what you're highlighting for me, a frustration with kids who want to consider extending their foster care.
Normal,
like twofold. Jacob's talking about how kids want to just leave at 18, and we've certainly experienced that. No amount of reason, support, love, involvement seems to be able to outscream that demon in their head that says I should be out of care at 18.
Right.
You know, they don't have anywhere to go. They're willing to be homeless. They're willing to get all these people out of their life. Got nothing to do, but dadgummit, I'm not going to extend my foster care because I'm 18. And like my kids, you know, yeah, they all turned 18 while they were still seniors in high school, but none of them said, I'm out of the house, you know, nor did we have that conversation. You know, it's something that we put upon the foster care community that says, hey, at 18, you can do whatever you want. The second part of that, I'm afraid, is you're not being given the kind of information that frees you at 18. Right. You still feel restricted. You still feel the stigma. And I know for me, that concern is the department doesn't know how to let go either at 18. Even right. Under extended foster care, they tend to still carry that. They've got to get permission for outings. They got to work all these angles, and they don't have conservatorship anymore. And I try to convince kids aging out of that fact, and that you're going to keep on gigging the state for money, keep on making them pay for your rent,
yeah,
you know, providing your transportation, getting you where to go, but they can't tell you anymore what to do. You have to work that out with your placement. I'm guessing you would probably never understood that. If you went back now, let's say you're 17 and a half or getting close to 18, what decisions would you make differently than you did at that time in light of what you now know as a 25-year-old?
Most definitely, I would have not rushed so fast to want to leave. But even when I did, I more than likely would have been for sure that I accessed more information. I would have been more on top of the people who were on my team. Because you know how everybody, when you're dealing with the youth, you have a circle, you have a team. That's all they always say. You have your support team. I feel like I would have been more persistent on them about like what I want out of my life, what I want my life to look like more, and things like that. I feel like I said, they have more of restraint. A lot of the times I feel like I wasn't being able to think for myself, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that, like I said, I would just do my own research, you know, because I feel like, you know, I had a CASA, she was freaking awesome. I had an attorney at Litem, she was awesome. You know, I feel like they spoke more for me, and they're more against a lot of what CPS was saying that they wanted for me. So just moving forward, I think I would just do a lot more research, like even at a younger age, because like I said, knowledge is power, and just access my benefits, like access anything that I could possibly access more. You know what I mean?
Well, I do. And before we actually focus on that very issue, because I think that highlights absolutely the therapeutic component of kids aging out. But before we do, I want to loop in Jessica quickly here as an attorney. Now, you had an attorney, okay? You might have had several over that period of time.
Right.
Talk about your relationship with your attorney, what you understood them to do, how often you were in communication with them. Did you even understand what they could do for you?
I did understand. I will never forget, her name was Dana Mills. She was actually my attorney for about 9 years. Actually, the whole time I was in care, she was my attorney at Litem. She never got off my case. And so
I'm sure, did she contact you regularly, like every?
Yeah, even after I aged out of care, we stayed connected with each other. And basically, she just made sure that I was kept safe. Anything that was going on within the household or wherever I was, they were doing what they needed to do. There was a time that I was in a process of getting adopted. She was my attorney at Litem, and the adoption mother became abusive. She was the type of person that, hey, she spoke for me to get me out of that home. When it came to like, hey, what do you want to do when you age out or things like that, she was the one who, like, you know, spoke on my behalf, spoke in the circle. If, you know, she felt like they weren't going to agree with certain things, which caseworkers never really did. So, you know, that was their job to make sure they had our back. And A lot of the time, that's one thing I could definitely say. She had my back, so she did.
And that's certainly, I'm going to say, great to hear. In my experience, somewhat unique to hear. Okay,
right.
Because attorneys aren't very, in my opinion, aggressive about staying in touch with their clients. We have to sometimes push them together, especially as CASA, because we may have a different position than the child might have, and that's where they need to go to their attorney. So Jessica, you know, you're now an attorney ad litem for several kids. I know we work together on some cases, and yet you've also been the CPS prosecutor. Weigh in here and give us some of your thoughts.
So I think part of your issue is, as far as communication goes, the family code only requires you to talk to your client prior to each hearing. So when you're in a permanent managing conservatorship portion of the case, there's only 2 hearings a year, once every 6 months. And so if you're following the law, I only have to talk to my client once every 6 months. So you've got attorneys that are adhering to those kind of minimum requirements. And in that situation, you're not getting to know your client very well. Your client probably doesn't trust you very much, and you're not going to build that same kind of relationship and get those same results for your kids. They're probably also not going to call you after they leave care because they don't have a relationship with you. You're just another random person who talks to them every now and then because they're in CPS care. So that would be...
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That would be a primary issue. And I mean, the best way to deal with that would be a change in requirements to talk to your kids more, maybe even on a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. Or if you're not going to do that, I mean, just as an attorney, you need to know what's important for you to be a good attorney. So you do need to talk to her.
So what challenges do you see that it's presented to the attorneys at Litem for children that would be helpful just for the attorneys? Obviously the children kind of have that distant relationship, but what could the community or anybody know that are some of the issues that an attorney faces when it comes to representing a youth?
Sure. So some of the issues that I've seen, my biggest thing is trying to get my kids to understand that I don't work for CPS. For whatever reason, they always want to tie me in with them. That causes an issue with our relationship and them trusting me because they don't trust CPS. They don't like them. So pushing kind of past that is a tough one. Another tough one is the difference between an attorney and guardian ad litem. Some counties appoint me in a dual role, which means I'm both. And that's really hard when you have a 16-year-old because as their guardian, I'm supposed to be doing what's best for them. As their attorney, I'm supposed to be doing what they want. And it's rare that a 16-year-old wants something that's in their best interest. And so then I have to walk this weird fine line unless the court will agree to appoint me a guardian as well. Then that leads into the issue as an attorney. I'm trying to get my kids to come around to the idea of what's in their best interest and make good decisions. But at the end of the day, my job is to do what they want, to advocate for what they want in court. And sometimes that's not good for them. And so I just have, on a personal level, I have issues doing that because I know it's not good for them and I know it's not what they need to be doing. And it's hard to kind of push back on them because, again, you are trying to build a relationship and maintain a relationship where they trust you and will talk to you. But if every time they talk to you, you tell them that the decisions they're making are not good ones, they're going to stop talking to you at some point.
And I'm just going to do one quick follow-up, and I definitely want to move into this other area for you, Jessica, and that is, as an attorney for a child who you know they're asking for something the court's not going to grant for whatever reason, would you say that to them? Say, I hear what you want, but you got to know the court's not going to give that to you, and here's why or whatever.
Absolutely, especially with my teen clients. I just tell them from the get-go that I'm going to be honest with them. They're not going to like what I have to say every time, but they're going to know that I'm always going to tell them the truth. And that's going to be either A, CPS will never agree to that, B, the court will never grant it, or C, CPS won't agree to it, but the court may grant it, so we can ask for it. And then even sometimes I've got kids asking for stuff and I tell them, I was like, listen, if you really want me to ask for that in court, I will ask for it, but the judge isn't going to like that you're asking for that.
Well, and I know Sandy and I had a case years ago where these twin girls, every hearing was going to ask to go live with some family person, you know, that family person, it wasn't good. It was not in their best interest. The department wasn't aware of it. But these girls would always say, we're going to ask that. As CASA, I was always honest. I said, you know, I hear what you're saying. We can't get behind that for this reason, and we won't. Do you appreciate that? And they always appreciated our honesty. They never seemed to really get mad about it. They go, well, they understood. And they always asked every 4 to 6 months about that thing. The judge never granted it till the very end. And of course, it blew up like we all knew it would. but nonetheless, you know, we try to be that kind of honest. Now, Lisa, does that, from what you heard from Jessica and what we tried to present, how would that have set with you in terms of the honesty factor, us telling you things that we don't think are in your best interest, but you still want to go forward with it? How would you have reacted to that?
I'm not gonna lie. I was a very, you know, tough kid in the foster care system. They say, you know, you bring my name up, Miss Howell. She was a lot, you know. So it didn't always sit right with me, getting the answer no or being told something that I can't do. A lot of the times I cannot deny I ran away, or a lot of the times, you know, I was in an RTC and I was in a lockdown facility. You know, most of the time I wanted to be with my mom, but I didn't understand at the time why I couldn't be with my mother, you know, until I aged out of care. I see her now. She's schizophrenic, you know, was on, you know, mentally she's not there. But I do understand why they shielded us for some of the stuff, because when you do age out, you see your parents, you see what, you know, they were dealing with and how they are now. You're like, okay, you know, I see the blessing in disguise in the troubles that I went through. You know what I mean? So I always try to see the bigger picture of the things, and as you get older, you start to realize that. So definitely I realized that over time.
And perfect segue, panel. Here we go into what I think is the meat of today's conversation, because what we see in Lisa is somebody who has obviously found her footing at age 25. I mean, yeah, she's definitely got her things going, and she's also already alluded to the reality that some of what she knew at the time at 18 might have not only been processed differently, but certainly been reacted to, you know, from her point of view. So I want to bring up the issue of outcomes. We have a limited time frame, and we tell these kids over and over at 18, there's this make or break moment in your life, okay? And we want at 18 there to be the kind of outcome that we would call successful. So I want to just open it up to whoever wants to chime in. What is a good outcome?
So if I can, I think that I just want to talk about what the department views as a successful outcome and how that ties into the day-to-day. So successful outcomes are typically, I would say, characterized by a couple of different factors. An adequate support system that is accessible and that has a trust-based relationship with the child. It also has to be not just limited to department or court-appointed individuals, right? So that could be our community partners, that could be our family members, that could be a number of different people. So adequate support systems I would account for a successful outcome. Another successful outcome is extended foster care. I know that that doesn't necessarily equate when we talk about, you know, the legal system, because that court of continuing jurisdiction does end at 18. But I do think that there are programs and initiatives out there that exist that can continue past that child's 18th birthday, and a lot of times even further than that. Other successful outcomes, if we have youth who are in foster care who have limited intellectual functioning and have intellectual disabilities, we partner with our community partners for those long-term adult living facilities that are able to meet the adults' needs, even though they may be limited, but to give them that normalcy and prepare them for that living situation. And then again, of course, we talk about reunification. If at all possible, if we can develop the existing, you know, either the biological family, maybe we look at previously terminated parents, we look at relatives, fictive kin, as you've probably heard, which is those relationships that aren't characterized by any type of legal bond. And so those are successful outcomes. If we can secure a level of permanency for these children that can ensure that they'll have that buffer between, you know, 18 and whenever they get their footing, like Lisa did, that's what is the most desirable outcome, right? Because when you're 18, Tim mentioned it, it's a magic number where all of a sudden, you know, you're an adult. And, but I think that there's still a gap there, right? Between when you become a legal adult and to when you become a successful adult. And so to me, a successful outcome is if we've adequately prepared that that child with a network of support that will prevent them from that homelessness, that will prevent them from, you know, the proverbial foster care to prison system pipeline. You know, we want to try to give those supports, but we are, you know, limited by our role. As everyone here has kind of mentioned, CPS tends to be, in terms of the support of adults for those kids, the bad cop, right? There's the good cop and the bad cop, because we're telling you what is in your best interest at all times, which is probably not what a 16-year-old or 17-year-old or 18-year-old wants to hear. But I do think that having those conversations where we unpack that why, right? And we really, truly, as much as humanly possible, bring our teenagers to an understanding of why can't you go home with mom, right? And what are our worries, and what are your worries, and where do we not align? And having those conversations, it's not going to be just one conversation, right? It's going to be multiple conversations leading up to that. And as you go through your development, you know, you started at 9 years old, your understanding of the circumstances that led to you coming into the system are going to evolve as you evolve, right? And so those continued conversations to empower you to understand, yes, there are situations in life that put you in this situation that limits you. However, what can we do to harness your existing strengths or develop your existing strengths so that we can empower you when you age out of the system, whether that's at 18 or at 21 or 22, to have enough capacity to reach out when you need help and to get your footing successfully.
So again, with all the organizations and support systems and perhaps even people in place for a child, who, whether they've been in care as long as Lisa or something else, let's talk about, and Jacob, I'm going to direct this more or less specifically to you, the brain development issue, the trauma, the frontal lobe impulsivity, decision-making, science as we've heard it related to how and when that develops and how trauma affects that development. Are we asking too much of a child who's legally turning to be an adult at 18 to make the kind of decisions they have to make in light of that trauma?
Yes, and you know.
Okay,
so
good. There it is, folks.
You know, done, and that's done. It. So this is, I train a lot in childhood trauma. So I'm going to try to simplify this a little bit. But if you think about the billions of neural connections that children make in utero and in the first years of life, and when something happens, especially trauma related, those connections become missed. And so now we have children who are 12, but they're cognitively 8, or maybe even their social development skills are 8, or their motor functions. And it's not that the children are a problem, because it is something that happened to them, and it's not something that they asked for. But our children oftentimes are cognitively, socio-emotionally behind, and that's okay. And so, but the issue is, you have an 18-year-old that's really 12 or 13 entering into the world, and so the brain healing may not have occurred yet, right? Or it might be in the process of healing, and we know that those connections can be restored. But we're sending kids out in the world unprepared. And I think, you know, kind of when Sandy was talking, we all have our outcome measures. You know, our connections, we use the Youth Drive survey. It's an evidence-based survey. That's all great, right? And we make sure that our kids have the resources. I think that's key. Like, do they know about the resources that they can access, like preparation for adult living, education training voucher, the tuition fee waiver? Yes, those are great things. But who are they going to call at 2 a.m. that's going to answer the phone? And I can tell you right before this, my adopted son, he's 26 years old. He's texting me, how do I make breaded shrimp? Like, you know, and you know, I know that you can go online and get stuff like that, but who are they going to call when they need help? Like, who is Lisa? Who could she have called at 3 a.m. and said, hey, I have nowhere to sleep tonight. Can I come crash on your couch? Like, and that prevents so many different safety issues that we know about as child welfare professionals, that kids should not be sleeping on the streets. Right. But I think that's to me, that's critical. It's like, do they have that person that's going to answer the phone at 2:30 in the morning or whenever they need the help?
Yeah. So Lisa, let me ask you then, in light of what Jacob has just described.
No, but seriously.
So what he described was kind of a fact for kids. We're kind of being unfair to them. We're saying, here's the resources, you daggum better take advantage of them at 18 because it's now your responsibility. We're all leaving you. Good luck, And we're asking, like he said, a 12-year-old in brain development, not to anybody's fault. Doesn't mean you're mentally challenged or anything like that. It's just part of something we all go through. But due to trauma, it has kind of been slowed down on the part of kids who've been abandoned by their families. So do you feel like that was true for you?
I feel that people go, like he said, people go through trauma differently and they heal differently. For me personally, I was abused. So my healing is different from somebody else's healing, It took a while for me to like close that chapter of my life and move forward to be able to grow and, do what I need to do. I think for me mentally, yeah, like I've gone through a lot. There's a lot of times that I would not be able to like function in day-to-day life, of course, before I have my kids, but like coming out of care and still dealing with what I went through being in care. Because I didn't just go through trauma before care, I went through trauma while I was in care as well. You know what I mean? So, I was molested in care. There were certain things that I have went through while I was in care that people really don't talk about, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't really know how to explain that. Yeah, I went through a lot of mental things. Just having a transition coming out for sure. There's a lot of moments that I was like, man, I can't call anyone. You know what I mean? Like that same support system that I had for so many years, they're no longer really there, anymore. They're just there for the long run. And that's why I think that it is so important that you build that trust, you build bonds, you build relationships, because it does help for a successful and better outcome for when we do, age out, for sure, because we could turn around and be like, hey, like we could call if we're going through a rough day or, whatever. Like I tell, Sarah all the time, sometimes I'm texting her, I'm like, hey, I'm having a bad day. Can you please send me a prayer? It's good to have that type of support, so I think it really is important for sure.
Well, before we get some other people contribute here real quick, Lisa, would it have made any difference when you were getting therapy? And I'm assuming you had regular therapy. How did that work for you? And did it seem to be a source of healing for you?
To be honest, though, it wasn't. I didn't like talking about my feelings, because some kids who go in care, they're not really big on the therapy. And for me, I wasn't really big on the therapy. I felt like I kept on having to be forced to reopen up something that I didn't want to have to talk about. If that's something that I don't want to talk about, I shouldn't have to be forced to talk about it in order to move out of this program or in order to get and graduate and get out of this RTC. You know what I mean? I do think that, of course, yeah, like I said, I did have behavioral issues, but it was like, I feel like I was being forced to talk about my abuse, and I just didn't want to talk about it anymore. I was constantly having to be, for the last 5 years or, whatever. And so it was like, how can I move forward if y'all keep having to rehash this over and over, And that was another thing that I felt like, with bringing up with foster youth, when you go in, like you're automatically being given medicine, you know what I mean? You're automatically, like you're sitting in front of a psychologist telling you this is what's wrong with you. You know what I mean? And I feel like when you age out of care, a lot of kids, they're so dependable upon that medicine because we have, you put it, like CPS has put it in their head that you have to take this med. This is what's wrong with you. This is, instead of being like, hey, when you get out of care, we don't want you to have to be dependable on meds. We want you to be able to function without of those. We want you to have a free mind, free, free of all of that. And I feel like you can't really think for yourself. You don't really deal with reality if you're on medication. Like that's not just what it is. I don't take meds anymore personally. I stopped at 16.
So therapy was a fail for you.
Yeah, it definitely was. Like I'm fine now. I just closed that chapter of my life. You know what I mean? I learned to forgive the person who was abusing me, talk to the woman every day. I set boundaries, with her and my kids. Grandma, you're allowed to see the kids, but, You know, you're not going to be disrespectful. You can't act the way you acted. I'm going to make sure that I protect my kids for what you did to me. You know, everybody's different. Everybody's different. For me personally, I didn't go through therapy. It wasn't a.
Okay, so departmental person Sandy, tell us about the department's position on therapy and kind of, because I feel like that's the big thing here, honestly. So how do we get a youth in a better position at 18 to make better decisions?
Right.
You know, they have the resources and they have the information. How do we get them to be able to process reasonably when our experience tells us it doesn't matter how much reason we present, it's just going to move. And the therapy, in my opinion, is meant, unless you tell me something different, Sandy, it is meant to help that process. But what are your thoughts?
So I think that it's important to note that the therapeutic models that are utilized, so there's various models that are utilized for different types of trauma, right? Lisa said it herself. Her trauma is very different, you know, than somebody else's trauma who's been through, you know, even no matter how similar you think it might be, how that trauma manifests itself for that child is contingent on individual persons. And so a lot of times I think what happens is we have really well-meaning residential treatment centers or therapeutic foster homes or therapeutic GROs, or I'm sorry, general residential operations that are operating off of a centralized model of treatment that maybe, for example, can be cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectic behavioral therapy or EMDR therapy. And so all of those various types of therapeutic models are intended to address specific symptomology and specific ways that the trauma is manifesting itself for that child. But if we have a child in a facility or in a home that's utilizing one type only, that might not be the most appropriate type of therapy for every kid in that home or for every kid in that treatment center. And so we do, you know, obviously we know that it's important for some type of treatment to be incorporated. And a lot of times that can mean for some people that they need both, right? They need medication management in addition to therapy. However, the modality of that therapy is contingent on what other types of resources we use. So I think that a lot of it does come to us with the presentation of the child, the therapeutic recommendations. But again, it's the recommendations based on how that child's responding to that specific type of therapy. And so I think that that's where, when we're looking at a child-central approach, we're looking at the individual child's needs, how this trauma is impacting this child's specific development, because it can impact, you know, Lisa had to grow up in a lot of other ways that most of us didn't, right? But then as to Jacob, what he was saying, there's other parts of her brain development that weren't able to get there, you know, because of that trauma. And so how can we approach it in a way that will enable Lisa to balance the responsibility of nearing adulthood with the accountability of what those actions may lead to. And getting to that understanding does mean that there has to be other ways to process that trauma. It can't just be regular talk therapy, maybe there's another type of modality that's used. There's some children that respond to very physical types of therapy models, play therapy, you've heard all of those types. So I think it's about going back to a child-specific model for the interventions that we utilize to ensure that that specific child is prepared to meet these specific milestones.
I want to piggyback on that real quick.
Go ahead.
So part of the issue is going to be, and this is where pretty much everyone watching and all of us need to get more involved with our legislature. In order to do that, we need more service providers, and we need service providers to offer all these different kinds of services. So we have kids that have psychologicals that will recommend a very specific type of therapy. But the problem is the department doesn't contract with anyone who offers that kind of therapy. And so now that's not available to your child. So I can go to court and ask the court to order CPS to pay for it. But if every single attorney did that, CPS wouldn't have money to pay for other things that are also necessary, like placement and food and the other requirements that they have to do. And so at the end of the day, we're always talking about money, and CPS needs more money if you want them to do their jobs right. That's just That's just all there is to it. They're going to need a lot more money to be able to offer what they need to offer and do what they need to do it correctly.
Great point, Jessica. Now, Jacob, you have more hands-on with the therapeutic component, both personally as well as there at the placements. What do you see being successful means to help a youth participate in therapy to start with? Because like Lisa suggested, she didn't really feel like she needed it, didn't want to do it. And that's common. I mean, I hear that from every teenager. They just don't want it, don't think they need it. And why would they? I mean, quite honestly, I wouldn't want to talk about it either. But yet, as a professional, you know the value. In fact, I think we all would agree, the value of the therapy component in terms of processing trauma, and let alone any kind of developmental issues in their brains. So how do you find your work in that area?
I think I'm going to shock you with my answer, Tim, because I am not a fan of, I don't think a child should be forced to do therapy ever. And I've worked in you've known, I've worked in several residential treatment centers. And then now as a provider, you know, we have an emergency shelter and a transitional living program. I think therapy, like Sandy said, there should be multiple options and an array. And I love that where I work now, we have highly skilled therapists that can do a lot of different modalities. That's what it's about. However, so I think of things in sports analogies, so forgive me, but if I have a football team, right, I'm not going to win every game with my offensive strategies or my defensive strategies. Sometimes it's my special teams that comes through, right? And so I think you have to offer our youth an array of services and something will stick that's going to help win. So me as a coach, head coach, right? Like you staying with my sports analogies, I'm a firm believer that children heal by their caregivers. It's not therapy. It's by the people that they interact with every day that take care of them is how the healing begins. And that's how the trust is restored. So I think therapy can help, and I think it's a component that can help, but I don't think it's the answer at all. And I think that kids should never be forced into therapy. Even when I ran a residential treatment center, I said, it did frustrate me that they were required to do therapy 1 time a week, 2 times a week, depending on their level of care, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what I would tell my therapists or my clinicians is like, no, we're going to offer it to the youth. And therapy sometimes looks like taking a kid for a walk or playing basketball with a kid or doing kind of outside of the box things. So, I mean, as adults on this panel, you know, we might decide that therapy will or will not work for an experience that we experience as adults, right? And so I think as when we force children into that, we do what Lisa says, tell your story again. Did it, you know, like what happened? Like, and it is re-victimizing youth. And that happens time and time again to them. Because if you think about when they come into placement, why are you in care? Like that's one of the questions that we have to ask on our intake packets. And we have to be very skillful as providers as to how we ask those questions, or do we ask that to the adult? Do we not ask that while the kid's there? You have to kind of like don't record this. You have to sometimes skirt around rules. So, but it's all in the good of not victimizing a child.
Right.
And so I think what I'm trying to say is I don't think therapy is the end all be all. I think it should be an option, and I think it's a component, but I don't think kids should ever be forced into therapy.
I'm sorry, but that's also with giving them an opportunity to feel more independent and being more free. You know what I mean? I think that's really big. And I was going to say another thing was when Jessica was saying with them needing more money, I feel like that is an excuse for the state for them to say that they need more money, because I mean, like, let's be real, they get a lot of money for these kids. If you're a warden of the state, they have to pay for you to be there. You know what I mean? And a lot of the times when we were even in care, let's say they're getting child support or they're getting Social Security, a lump sum at a time. Okay, you're giving some, the state decides how much they're going to give to that foster parent. They should have been setting something up to where they're putting half of that money into a treasure fund for the kids when they age out of care. So they're not dealing with homelessness. They're not dealing with these type of things. If you start to look at how much money is being deposited and given to them over the year, it's going to accumulate to, I would say, a lot of money. You know what I mean? So for me, that is nothing but an excuse, because if you see now, you could do a check fact. You go on the news, they're having lawsuits now in Texas with youth who are coming out, you know, because they're trying to figure out where all their money was going. You know what I mean? CPS, I don't know if caseworkers or, you know, the state, they were taking the money and they were using it where it should have been used. You know, things like that, that needs to be addressed. That needs to be, you know, shown to light. Like, let's be real. Like, the money isn't being used where it needs to go. The times when we're in care, I only went shopping. I had a voucher for $100 and it was to Target. You go on to Target. We all know how expensive that is. Like, why am I only getting $100 for a year? Come to find out, I aged out of care. I requested the ledger back, thousands and thousands of dollars. You know, my grandfather, he was in the VA. They're getting VA money. They're getting Social Security money, including child support. Where was it? Nothing to show. So I don't think that it's, you know, the money. I just think that it's not being used where it needs to be. You can't even do extracurricular activities in foster care. A lot of the times when we're in care, we weren't even allowed to do that. There's no funds. We don't have the funds. We don't have the money. That's no excuse. Y'all are our parents. Whatever we need, therefore, the state gives it to you, it should be provided. There's no excuse. That's just how I feel.
I think we can all agree that money is sometimes not used the way it should. But at the end of the day, the state is caring for a vast number of kids who have zero income coming in. And so some of your money may have been utilized to help care for some of those kids. I'm not saying that that's right or that that's how it should be, but that is how it is right now. And in addition to providing for you guys, the purpose of the CPS system is to rehabilitate your parents. And so they're spending an excessive amount of money providing services to parents as well. So that's where some of that money goes also. At the end of the day, I agree with you that not having money or having money is not a great excuse, but it is a very real issue. And that is why we don't have some quality providers, is because the state of Texas doesn't pay them what they're worth. Just as an example, court-appointed attorneys get paid different amounts depending on what county you work in. And some counties pay significantly less than other counties. So you're not going to get good attorneys, which means you're not going to get good advocates, which means you're not going to get good results. So that kind of stuff is stuff that does need to be dealt with in order to get good results. You need good providers, need good workers. And to do that, you need to pay people appropriately. And that goes along with the therapy too.
And
I also want to add to Lisa.
But what are the kids worth? I'm sorry, but what are the kids worth? You know what I mean? We're worth more than all of that. You know what I mean? That's why I'm saying that money needs to be put in funds for like each account for these kids, because the issue is what are we worth? The issue is, how are we going to break the cycle when we get out of care and we're not going to go through these same things, feeling like we're lost, feeling like we have no one, feeling like we're set up with nothing. We have no money. We have nothing. At the end of the day, you still get to go home to your family. You have a home, you have a bed. You know what I mean? You don't have to deal with what those kids are dealing with on an everyday basis. They're dealing with trauma every day, having to be snatched from their parents, however they got snatched from, whether it be weed, smoking a blunt, whether they got hit, or whether they just got left outside on accident. People get caught, CPS caught on them for all different type of reasons. You know what I mean? But the big thing is, what are we worth to you guys? Because y'all are trying to break the cycle of doing this. So you got to put your money where your mouth is. Like, less of y'all, more of what are we worth? You know what I mean? That's
one thing I want to say.
Jacob, go ahead and offer, and then I'm going to kind of like focus.
Well, I mean, you know, so I've been in the game for a minute, so I want to say something to Lisa. I think at the time that you aged out of care, and the services that you were available, things have progressively gotten a lot better for fostering youth.
And that's what I've heard, right?
And so, you know, my heart breaks to hear some of that stuff about extracurriculars and all that stuff. And I think there's been a shift, and I think Sandy could probably speak to that more, but there has been a large shift in the last, 5 to 8 years for the kids getting more, right? And I think there's also been a shift on the backside of the CPS system where you're seeing more Title IV money go to parents and caregivers, where relatives and kinship providers used to not get money. And there was no incentive for family members. Ultimately, the kids are better off staying with their families if at all possible. I think we would all agree with that.
Right.
But I can tell you as a provider, I'm closing a shelter in Corpus Christi right now because I have to weigh two things. One, can I afford to keep that shelter going? And B, do I want to deal with the state of Texas? And I hate to say it, but when those decisions come up, more likely it's like, no, I don't want to deal with the state. And so you're seeing more providers close services. I'm shifting at Connections. We're shifting to more preventative services, which is great, which is what the communities need. But I know also when I close my shelter in Corpus, hey, there's not a whole lot down there. And it sucks. It sucks for the kids. It sucks for the community. But ultimately, we're seeing that mass across the state of Texas right now. And so it does come down to some dollars and cents, but it also comes down to some of the standards and rules that we have to abide by.
Yeah.
So let me kind of, time is an issue here. So I want to bring this to sort of a place where I think this presentation is meant to go, and that's to our community. I mean, there's going to be people who see this panel and want to know what they can do and how can they proceed and help be a solution to the problem rather than just listening to the problem. And I think it's come to an interesting place where, you know, we're talking about money, we're talking about legislation, we're talking about involvement, you know, people being there hands-on with a youth who finds themselves approaching decision-making at 18 without really having a strong emotional foundation, an intellectual foundation based on their trauma, and they need people who they obviously trust and care about. So there's several ways here that the community can be mobilized, in my opinion. But I do believe I want to definitely say something to what Lisa's talking about. The Department of Family and Protective Services is a tax-run organization. In other words, it's the voters of the state of Texas who decide ultimately how much money anybody gets, including DFPS. And you've got senators, legislators in Austin right now even making those decisions, right? So if the community were to do anything and being willing to provide more money to DFPS, they're only able to do with what they do. And maybe they don't always do it well with what they've got, but they still have a limited amount of money. And I think if Jessica is saying anything, they could use more. Obviously, the more money we can filter into their system, we believe and trust that it would be used appropriately for some of the issues Lisa has brought to the attention. But we can't always blame DFPS for the limited pool they have to draw from. What we can do, however, is promote more money being spent on our part, who's the voting population of Texas. And that then becomes Republicans, Democrats, who's going to want to spend on taxes, who doesn't. So it is a very complicated issue that does unfortunately focus on money, but it focuses on us as a community as well. So I want to make that clear to start with. What else besides voting, which is really kind of what I'm saying, voting for more or supporting more income into child welfare, what else could community members do in you guys' opinion?
I mean, I think a mentorship program that helps an aged out youth kind of follow or have that person that they can call and say, hey, I just got into a car accident. How do I file with my insurance company? I don't know how to do this. So like I grew up in a two-parent household, limited to no trauma. I went to college and got in my first car accident, had no idea what to do, zero ideas. And so, I mean, I had all that great background. I can only imagine a foster youth who didn't have that or didn't have somebody to call, what they would do or how they would figure that out. And I could only imagine it would be incredibly complicated and frustrating. So if you could have a mentor in the community who's willing to be there for you and walk you through those basic life issues, I think that would really help out.
Yes, and Jessica, I'm going to piggyback off that too. And, you know, Jacob mentioned this earlier. I think it's kind of, you know, we call that relational permanency, right? And just having that long-term caring adult that you can call at midnight. I had a youth call me last night at midnight who had been pulled over by the cops and had a warrant out, and she was going to get arrested on the spot. You know, we were able to problem solve, so she didn't go to jail. But, you know, that person that you can call to get out of jail or walk you down the aisle, or to call to ask how to make shrimp. I mean, that's huge. And it is, you know, something that's something that Foster Angels helps with too. We actually have piloted a mentor program, and something that we're hoping to expand on, and a great way for the community to get involved. I think another way too is just using community members using their social capital. I mean,
and connections. Like, you know, we had a young woman reach out recently who wanted to take real estate classes, and we just put that out there to our network. And sure enough, you know, that same day we had one of our supporters email us back and say, we'll pay for her classes, we'll pay for her books, and we'll hire her when she's done. So, you know, it's not even writing a big check or committing to some long-term thing, but using community members being able to use their connections and resources can also be extremely beneficial and helpful. And then the other thing, you know, that comes to mind, and this is a more long-term thing, is, and Jacob can speak to this, but adopting an older youth, or even a youth who is independent and out, you know, on their own, but just providing, you know, a family for them and a place where they can come home for Thanksgiving dinner and come home and do laundry, or, you know, just having a family, even though they're technically aged out and independent now. It's not too late. You can still, you know, adopt a young person later on.
I mean, I said this when I adopted my son. They asked me, well, what should the community do? And I said, you should do something. I don't know what. You should do something. You know, you got to get involved. Either donate money to your local nonprofit, volunteer somewhere, get a foster and adopted, become babysitter certified, do something. Don't just sit on the sidelines. And so whether that be advocating to you know, our state leaders, do something. Don't just, we have, you know, I do a lot of like ministry type work with foster youth too. And if less than 1% of Christians in this country fostered and adopted, we wouldn't have a child welfare system. So people got to get involved, and they got to do something. And you know, I think you got to play to your skill set. You know, Jessica's an attorney. She uses her gift to help kids, right? Like, you know, Sarah, you know, a social worker uses her gift to help kids. So I think whatever you do, just use your gifts or whatever resources you have, and just get involved and do something. You know, you can't just sit on the sidelines. We got a foster care system in Texas that is a hot mess right now. You know, we got providers closing their doors. We got a huge federal lawsuit going on. We got, you know, just kids still sleeping in offices. That breaks my heart to hear that there are kids that literally have been victimized and traumatized, and now they're sleeping on a cot in a state building. Like, you know, so we got to do something, and we got to figure out a way to keep more kids home. And I think we got to figure out a way to keep more kids with their biological families as well.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a big one too, is I do think that CPS as an entity does need to focus more on the family, not necessarily the parents, but on the family. They do have those minimum standards, and unfortunately those minimum standards preclude a lot of family members that on paper maybe don't look so good, but that would be appropriate enough and safe enough to keep these kids and would always be there for them. Especially when you get kiddos that have some behavioral problems. Foster parents will only do it for so long because they're not related, whereas a family will always be there for you. And you can always come back to them. They may get mad at you, but you can always circle back to them, is generally what's going on. And so we do need to spend more time and resources trying to rehabilitate those family members so kids can stay with family.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, so closing comments. I mean, I think Jessica, you just said some great stuff. Jacob, Sandy, you got anything you want to say in closing?
No, y'all are awesome. Everybody across the board. Mute that, delete it.
Thank you. Sandy, you got anything you want to say for the department? You look frozen, and we might have lost Sandy. I don't know.
Sandy?
Okay. I think she's frozen.
She's no longer there.
Yeah. Oh, well. Okay. Well, I want to thank Jacob, Jessica, Sarah, Sandy, and most of all, Lisa. You guys' participation in this, I hope, can go a long way to helping those who watch this to be informed, to understand the challenges, and to know how to step up and maybe do something practical to move forward, and not just be real concerned, but actually do something, because I think concern is very easy to come by. What we need are people to do whatever they can. And some of them can't ever do, you know, what maybe a CASA does, or, you know, work as a volunteer somewhere, but, you know, they're willing to give money, and that's fine too. But I do believe legislation is also another level that we can pursue to try to help what we believe are the really most disenfranchised population right now in our state. So again, thank you all for your time. And I guess for that all being said, we'll just close out and again, have a great day, everybody. We appreciate you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.